I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we discover there's yet another species of alien that have been manipulating the human race for thousands of years, because this week we watched The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon.
Written by Steven Moffat.
Directed by Toby Haynes.
And aired on April 23rd and 30th, 2011.
Yeah, so we're finally in Season 6 proper. And, amazingly, Series 11 starts tomorrow when we're recording this, but that'll have been a week ago. Exactly 7 days ago when this actually goes out, so...
Right. Are you hyped? I'm
kind of hyped.
I'm actually kind of hyped. I mean, I'm not going to watch the season until we get there.
I'll probably watch this season, but this will probably be the final season that I watch, quote, live, unquote, that's not for the podcast.
Well, because we'll probably catch up, or, like, if we don't, we'll be, like, very close to whenever the next season airs.
So... But I'm excited. I mean, I'm going to watch it. I'm definitely curious to see how it's going to go. I'm going to see... I mostly want to see how Chris Chibnall is going to take the show compared to Russell T and Steven Moffat.
I mean, yeah, we can just talk about this for a second. I mean, I'm mostly, and this is something I want to bring up in this episode later on, but like this era, it seems like the Moffat era is a very angsty era of Doctor Who. And it seems like this new season is not going to be that, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just the early 11th Doctor stuff. I don't know.
Well, I feel like it's more, the 11th Doctor stuff is pretty angsty. I think Moffat tones it way back when he gets to the 12th Doctor because, it's a different Doctor and it's a different actor and may want to take it in a different direction. But it's definitely interesting that, Chibnall's been advertising his first episode as like a good place for new viewers to jump on, which Steven Moffat did that too with the 11th Hour. But it's interesting that every showrunner in the reboot has like advertised their first episodes like, this is a great point for you guys to jump on.
Well,
and whether or not that's like advertising speak or it was actually designed that way.
I mean, whether or not it is, like, they're going to say that. They're not going to be like, yeah, if you're a newcomer, like, this probably isn't a good place for you. They're not going to say that, like, whether it, is or not. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think Chibnall's taking it more so than the other two did because he's like, we're not going to see the Daleks. We're not going to see the Cybermen in my first season. Like, my first season was designed to be, like, completely standalone from the previous history of Doctor Who. Like, there'll be callbacks and references, but, like, the point of the season is to be roughly standalone.
Huh.
So, it's interesting. Compared to this episode two-parter, which was like the exact opposite of that, which was like if you didn't know what Doctor Who was, you'd be so confused when you were watching this. Which we'll get into in a second, but we should talk about production because Steven...
and I just realized I forgot to look anything up for this.
It's fine. It surprisingly really wasn't that interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty surprising.
The main thing was like Steven... The format of the reboot followed roughly the same thing every year until now for the 5 seasons. It was like 13 episodes comprised of roughly 7 stories ending on a 2-parter. Although most people argue that Utopia, Sound of Drums, Lost of the Time Lords is a 3-parter, and that's how we did it on this show. And Moffat was like, I just want to change it up. We're going to start with a 2-parter. And everyone was like, whoa, Steven.
And end on a single episode.
They're like, whoa, Steven, back up. Whoa.
These are radical changes, man. You can't just do this to the show.
I mean, it was pretty radical at the time.
I mean, like, really? But it's such a small change, just starting on a 2-parter, ending on a single episode. It's such a, like...
It is a small change, but I think it's actually, like, pretty major in terms of, like, audience retention, because it kind of wraps the audience in for 2 episodes right off the bat, whereas if you start with a single episode, they can watch, like, oh, I don't like this, and then just drop off. Whereas, like, if you start off with a 2-parter, in my opinion, you watch the first part and you're like, damn, what's going to happen in the second part?
Yeah, and I mean, with this story in particular, you're really like, damn, what's going to happen? What's, like, even going on here?
And I mean, at the end of the story, you're still like, damn, what's going on in this episode? And, me, knowing the entire plot of the whole season, I'm still like, damn, what's going on in this episode?
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't, because I almost spoiled this entire season on purpose, but I ended up not doing that.
Yeah, to spite me? I texted Keon at the end of this episode, like, don't read the story notes for this on the wiki, because it'll spoil, like, the big reveals of the whole season.
And it was like, now that you've said that, I'm going to do it, but I ended up not doing it. I know some stuff. I mean, there's something going on with Amy, I know that. Although that might be obvious even if I hadn't spoiled it.
Yeah, that's kind of obvious, especially how this episode ends.
It's like
story ends.
She's like replaced with an Auton, and we don't find out for like half the season or something like that.
Not an Auton. And is she actually replaced?
I think she is. I think I read that. I don't know. I'll have to. That's my guess is that she's replaced. I guess not with an Auton, but.
Well, so And besides that, Moffat was like, well, so the BBC was like, hey, Series 5 got like record American viewership, and we want to like increase American viewership more and like quote reward unquote American fans. And
I think it's a reward to see America in Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's just a weird way to word it.
I guess. I mean, I've wanted like more stories set in the U.S. I don't want like a majority of stories. No, like 20th, like modern era London is fine for me. Like 2010, 2011, whenever the story takes place, London is perfect. But yeah.
And Moffat was like, okay, we'll set a story in America, and then he was like looking for locations in America that like didn't look like England, so they considered Florida, and then he was like, no, too close.
Florida's too close? I guess it is like sort of marshy.
Yeah. And
like we got to go to a desert.
They chose the desert of Utah.
This is where you splice in kids in America, and we get a copyright notice.
No, thank you.
This is where you splice in the whole song like some podcasts do.
No, thank you. And yeah, he wrote it. Apparently, in order to help Alex Kingston's performance, he told her the entire overarching plot of the season, like how everything resolves and how the whole thing pans out, because the actual overarching plot of the season is actually pretty centered around River.
Well, that also makes sense, right? Because River knows what's coming for them.
Right.
But they don't know what's coming at all. So it's actually sort of a neat little meta thing there.
Yeah, so he told Alex Kingston like the whole season's worth of plot, but he didn't tell the rest of the crew, so everybody else was in the dark. And they filmed all of the TARDIS scenes and the restroom and all the interior scenes in London and Cardiff before they went to America, and they took like a skeleton crew and filmed on location in Utah. Lost.
Nice.
Filming started in October 11th, I think. And yeah, that's about it. Steven Moffat considered quite a few names for these episodes, but eventually settled on Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. I know the first episode he said was originally entitled Year of the Moon, and the second one, I don't remember what he called the second one, but then he decided on the Impossible Astronaut for the first episode and changed the second to Day of the Moon.
Sure.
So, yeah, that was that. This was production.
Interesting. There's not much going on there.
I think there's going to be more for the middle of the season because things get kind of wonky in the middle of the season, especially with a mid-season break and
they're really
a bunch of other stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah, I read that there was going to be a mid-season break, and they're really ramping up. This season is like two things just combined into one whole. Like it was kind of Series 5 kind of did that as well.
But this is like there was like an actual couple months gap between the two, which I think actually hurts this season.
Well, I mean, we're not going to be experiencing that.
We won't be experiencing that, but I think we can talk about it when we get there.
Sure.
Anyway, so at the end of last season, I told you that one character was going to die in the first 5 minutes. You predicted it was going to be either Amy or Rory. Surprise, it's the Doctor.
I said it was going to be Rory. Right? Actually, I think I said I hoped it would be Rory. Which, like, this episode is really, like, sort of 180'd my opinion on Rory, honestly.
Well, that's good. I told you Rory becomes awesome. But anyway.
I don't think he's, I don't know.
These people.
You just kind of feel bad for him in this episode.
Well, yes, because Amy kind of becomes more of a D-bag.
I mean, this is the second Series 2 Rose, like, dilemma, where she was, like, pretty awesome in her first series, and then, this happens.
Well, Amy kind of just becomes a D-bag to Rory, and it's sad, but...
And noticeable.
But basically it begins with Amy, Rory, River, and...
Some other guy
getting these letters in TARDIS blue-colored envelopes. Amy and Rory are like, oh, the Doctor hasn't come back to visit us for like 3 months.
Right.
But they keep finding like references to the Doctor throughout history, and there's this kind of funny line where we're always like, do you really think the Doctor's calling out to us through history? And he's like, on the TV, he's got like Laurel and Hardy on, and the Doctor just pops in, like waves, and they're like completely oblivious to it because Rory's talking with Amy.
Right.
And so they follow the letters, which give them like a set of coordinates and a date, which turns out to be
in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere, Utah, at a lake called Lake Silencio. Fun fact.
Wow. Wow. They get there on a school bus, interestingly
I
enough.
think you find out the name of the lake later in the season.
So they come back to this lake.
Well, I have to explain what's going on with the
Yeah. I
doctor.
mean, this to me, this setup, this entire like setup for this episode seems like more of a setup for this season, really, where like a lot of these events are going to revolve around
Yeah.
this event,
Yeah. That
which
is kind of it. Yeah.
I don't know how much that's going to work. I'll have to see.
Well, basically, they show up. The doctor's like, we're going to go to space in 1969. Then he walks.
Space 1999.
Everybody keeps telling us to do that for a podcast.
Yeah, I mean,
That and Star Cops.
I've been looking into the show recently, and it actually looks pretty cool.
Yeah. I looked into it when my dad told me about it, and
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Blake 7-ish length as well. 48 episodes if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Strap in, one more year.
An astronaut comes out of the lake and shoots the doctor and kills him. I made a note of this, but Matt Smith looks like noticeably older in this entire episode.
Yeah, I noticed that too. There's more like I don't know if this was just like age being unkind to like over the single year between last season and this one, or like if they did old makeup on him or whatever, because the Doctor is supposed to be 1,000 years older, or like 2,000 years
200,
older.
I think.
Or yeah, sorry, 200.
Well, 200 years older in the scenes where he dies. But
Yeah,
then,
but
like,
it's throughout the whole episode. So
they come back, and the other doctor is supposed to be like close to the age that he was before. But
Yeah.
like Matt Smith looks noticeably older.
yeah, I didn't know what was going on there, but I did notice that.
Yeah, the doctor who shows up and dies at Lake Silencio claims he's 1,103 years old.
Right, and that's how they sort of find out that the one who is there for the rest of the episode isn't.
Yeah,
This
because this old dude shows up and he's, my name's Canton Delaware the Third.
Here's why this scene was kind of funny is that this guy shows up before the Doctor even gets shot. This guy shows up and he's sort of just in the background, and they're like, "Well, who's that?" And then they turn around, and the astronaut's there, and then all the stuff we just described happened, and they kind of just like forget about this guy for a second. I mean, I understand why, but like,
But then he walks up with a gas can. He's like, "You're gonna be needing this," and they're like, "Who the hell are you?" And he's like, "I'm Canton Delaware the Third." Like, why are you here? And he's like, "Same reason all of you are." And he pulls out an envelope from his pocket. It's numbered number 4, which is a key that River picks up on after they burn the Doctor's body. That the Doctor numbered all the envelopes, but they haven't seen envelope number 1 because Amy and Rory only got 1 envelope between the two of them, and that was labeled
Right.
2, and River Song was 3, and then Canton Delaware was 4.
so they're like, who does the Doctor trust more than anyone? And the answer is himself.
Yeah, they go to this diner.
You go back to the diner, and the
The envelope's sitting on the table, and they're like, "Man, who does it belong to?" And the Doctor just busts through, and River's like, "Wow, this is cold, even by your standards." And the Doctor's like, "What's going on? Why are you all here?"
she slaps him, so that was
And he's like, "I probably
nice, I
deserve
guess.
that." She's like, "You do, for what you're gonna do." And he's like, "Well, I don't know what we're gonna do." Because when River, I almost said the River, when River meets the older Doctor, she like compares notes with him to go over like where they are in their timelines, and he's like done everything or most of the things with her. But then she asks the younger Doctor about, I don't remember what he asked her about, like Giraffe Bob or something, and he's like, "Who's that?" And she's like, "Oh damn."
or starting to get some of the shoddy American accents already with the people working at the diner and whatever.
So
Some of them were better than others.
So when this first happened and the Doctor died, I was like really surprised because I didn't know anything about the season when I watched this. And the Doctor
You didn't
just
think
dies.
you didn't think that.
Well,
he
I
was
did
gonna
because
stay
I didn't.
dead,
I
right?
didn't know. Well, when I watched this, I didn't know that like the 11th Doctor comes back for the next season. I didn't know any of that. Like in my mind, the 11th Doctor could just be dead at the end of the season, then he regenerates into the 12th Doctor, like while his body's burning or some nonsense.
I don't know. I don't know if I would.
I mean,
ever believe
that would be less of a cop-out than what they actually do, spoiler alert, but I don't know. I was really surprised when I watched this the first time, and that's all I wanted to bring up, and then I thought it was a pretty effective hook to grab me for the rest of the episode. Started to lose its luster a little bit because they like... That's the thing, in this episode, they like kind of dodge it because River tells Amy and Rory, like, we can never tell him what happens. Like, we can never tell him that he died there.
Right.
He needs like, because if we tell him then we could affect the time stream.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, like I didn't even here's how much like I didn't buy this death, right? Is I didn't even connect it with the thing you said last week, which is like Steven Moffat claiming someone was gonna die. And the doctor like I didn't even connect the doctor's death in this episode with that until you said it right now. Like that's how
Yeah.
much I didn't buy that he was dead.
Because it's Doctor Who, and you can't kill the Doctor. I mean, you can regenerate him, but like killing him,
Right.
that's like a cardinal sin of Doctor Who. And you know there's going to be some cop out to get out of it later on.
Yeah. Like giving him a whole new batch of regenerations or whatever.
That's not this season.
Right.
That's not the cop out they used to get out of this.
Throwing that out there because I thought it might be.
No, you should just prepare yourself. I mean, there are hints that
Is the doctor replaced with an Auton? Is that why he looks so much older? Like they kind of got him wrong, you know?
Okay, I'm not going to say anything, but like this overarching plot line is actually like there is an overarching plot line here, and there are actually hints to not only how River ties into this whole thing, but also how the Doctor like gets out of dying over the course of the whole season.
I mean, I don't doubt that this is going to be a total cop out by the end of the season, but it's interesting here. Like, is the girl some sort of regeneration or like reincarnation of the Doctor or something? Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, there's that scene at the end too, which is like
Right.
That's the big scene that kind of really makes you wonder what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I liked that.
Basically, what happens next is that the Doctor is trying to get out of them like who sent them the envelopes, and they're not telling. And
Amy really wants to tell, though. It's like on the tip of her tongue, and River and Rory have to be like, no, you can't say anything.
but Amy then swears on fish fingers and custard that this is like trustworthy and that the Doctor's got to trust her. So the Doctor says, "Okay,
Because they're trying to get the Doctor to go to 1969, like
the older Doctor
the
said."
older Doctor hinted at.
And the Doctor says, like, oh, there are some years that are, like, easier to travel to than others because they're, like, more in flux or something like that. He has some
like,
technical explanation for, like, why the TARDIS is actually drawn to 1969
it's like
as well.
Some years have more. Some years are like Saturdays. They have more interesting stuff going on. And some are like Thursday afternoons, and they don't have that much interesting going
What's
on.
wrong with Thursday afternoons? Yeah, that's right.
Well,
Nothing.
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 I mean, I'm not the one who said it. Like, I'm not making this claim, you know? Well, what's that book where the frogs like fought Tuesday or something? It's like
I don't know.
extremely famous, like more famous than it should be. Picture book. It's called
I have
like
no idea.
Tuesday, and it's all this weird crap happening and like
I don't know.
raining frogs. And I think
Raining frogs?
yeah. You ever heard of this?
Nope.
Huh.
Must not be as famous as you thought. So the Doctor and Co land. The Doctor's like trying to show off. He's like, I can make the TARDIS invisible. And Rory's like, wait, you can make the TARDIS invisible? He's like, yeah, and he does it. And there's this loud noise that starts playing that River turns off. And then I was like, hey, did you do something? She's like, nope. And then he's like, we're gonna land. No, sorry, we're gonna land silently. And then that loud noise plays.
Yeah.
And then he's like, we're gonna be invisible. And then like all the lights come on inside the TARDIS, and River turns them off, and they land silently, invisibly in the Oval Office,
Right.
where
And Nixon is talking to some guy.
Yeah, who we find out is young Canton Delaware III.
Right. Now let's just talk a little bit about Canton.
Well, before we do that, I just want to mention this is a fun production thing that the older Canton Delaware is played by the younger Canton Delaware's actor's father.
Huh.
So
Okay.
they considered having the same actor play both, just like an old makeup, but then the production
And
crew...
his dad looked a lot like him.
Yeah, the production crew was like, hey, his dad looks a lot like him, and also like it would be a lot easier if we just like used his dad, so...
Yeah. Another sort of connection there, you know, with Amy's cousin playing young Amy. But yeah, I don't know, to me, this character is like almost a knockoff Jack Harkness, right? In a way. I mean, he's going to come back. Like, it's... Right? I mean, to me, it was fairly odd. Like, I'd be surprised if he didn't come back at least once this season. Either in his old form or young form.
He's an interesting character, I think, because he's in 1969, but he travels with the Doctor and just kind of accepts it. And the Doctor...
Which is part of why he's pretty cool. You know, he's this guy from an older era, and he's confronted with all this tech that he wouldn't even be familiar. Not even like alien, like a phone and stuff like that.
Yeah, like later on when he's got the phone, he's like, "This is a video phone." whatever a video phone is. And the Doctor trusts him enough to like invite him to his death at Lake Silencio in Utah. So even though in reality, the Doctor knows him for, I guess, 3 months. So actually, that would be quite an amount of time.
Yeah, what, 3 months? Why do you...
Because there's a
What do you say
3-month
that?
time jump between the first episode and the second, where the Doctor spends
Oh,
3
yeah,
months
yeah.
locked up in
Right.
Area 51,
Yep.
with Canton Delaware III overseeing his lockup.
I guess it took him like 3 months to get started on that enclosure, and then like a couple hours to finish it. Now that I think about it,
Yeah.
I say what they say is true. The hardest step of a process is just starting it.
That was the hardest part of Zenith. Coming up with a name, making up a logo and assets. Then from
Well,
there,
that
it
was on
these
you, while the
smooth
logo
sailing.
and stuff. It is.
Anyway, they walk out. Well, the Doctor walks out of the TARDIS, and because the scanner doesn't work, and he's in Nixon's office. He's like, "Oh, awkward."
He's just kind of he's sort of just tiptoeing and creeping behind them.
Right.
Interestingly enough, and then they notice him.
Well, Nixon's playing this phone call he gets every day apparently,
Right, from a young girl
and she's
who I thought, and this was interesting. I liked how they did it, because at first I was like, all right, is this like a phone call through time? Because the person was like, I'm Jefferson Adams, whatever it was, Hamilton. I was like, what? So what's going on? Is this like one of like a young like Jefferson or young Adam? I didn't know. I thought it was like maybe a phone call from like this 18th century or something like that.
well, Nixon assumes that it's a boy's voice because he says Jefferson. He doesn't say like I'm Jefferson Hamilton,
Right.
Jefferson Adams Hamilton. He just says Jefferson Adams Hamilton, and Nixon assumes it's in response to this question that he asks, "Who are you?" But Nixon also asks the question, "Where are you?" And the Doctor realizes now, but he doesn't indicate that he's figured this out now until later, that the boy or the girl actually is responding to the question, "Where are you?" and not the question, "Who are you?"
Right. So the Doctor, the security has the Doctor and Amy and everyone else at gunpoint, but the Doctor's like,
the Doctor tells River to materialize the TARDIS so that they'll like believe him, I guess.
but he tells them to basically give him, a couple minutes to sort of prove himself.
Canton Delaware is kind of like 5 minutes, eh? All right, we got your 5 minutes. Because I guess Canton Delaware is just impressed by this
5
TARDIS.
minutes.
Why is that a
It's the beginning of Toy Story, where the Andy's mom is like, we have 5 minutes. He's like, 5 minutes. He takes out all his toys. It's like, it's going to take longer.
I used to do that. You got 10 minutes. Sick. Dump everything out. Let's go. The Doctor actually does figure it out.
Yeah, this is like, I was sort of opposed to this as it was going on. I was like, this is another one of those Sherlock moments, right, where he's figuring things out that he would never know, and in 2 seconds, and he's deducing.
Yeah, but then the deduction makes complete sense.
Yeah, no, it does, because he already guessed that it's street names, so he's just trying to find the location, which is like a difficult but doable thing.
I don't know if it was doable in 5 minutes, though.
All right, maybe not 5 minutes, but I mean, are you the Doctor?
Well, yes, according to the 5 Doctors episode we released where we met our future selves. Man, I remember when we thought that was a good idea?
Remember when we thought our acting was good enough to do that?
Remember when we thought our acting lived up to Jim and Martin's? Remember when Jim and Martin killed us acting-wise in that episode? It's good times.
Little does anyone know we're still acting now. Just to throw suspicion on our shoddy acting.
Well, so the Doctor points out that there's this intersection in Florida between 3 streets, apparently, named Jefferson, Hamilton, and Adams. The Doctor also mentions that 2 of those founding fathers fancied him.
Was this a nod towards like how they were thinking of doing this in Florida? Like, we'll set this in Florida.
Possibly. They do go to Cape Canaveral, like now, and that's when they find the spacesuit, but that's all the time they spend in Florida, and it's all indoors.
Right, sort of in a warehouse.
They do go
area.
back to Florida later on. Canton, Delaware, and Amy go back to Florida when they're looking for the little girl, and they go to the orphanage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I completely forgot about.
But we've forgotten to mention, maybe intentionally, actually. I'm just going to pretend that this was intentional, but we've forgotten about the silence, which we do actually
Yeah,
meet.
which kind of we kind of meet them like now ish.
Well, we met them in
We met them.
we met them in the White House because we
Well,
first meet them at the lake because Amy sees one,
she sees something, and you don't really get a good shot of what it is. Just sort of looks like a figure off in the
and
distance.
Rory's like, "Hey, what are you looking at?" She's like, "What? Oh, nothing." And then she goes into the restroom at the White House, and
There's one standing there, and this was one of my favorite parts of the episode. This villain, the Silence. They were really cool. They were creepy. They actually did sort of creep me out.
yeah, Moffat advertised them as the creepiest Doctor Who villains ever.
They're up there, and I think something that has to do with it is how their eyes are achieved. But we'll get into that maybe at the end.
Well, in this first like proper scene, there's this other lady in the washroom, and she looks at the silent, and Amy's looking at both of them.
The Silent, is that what like just
Yeah,
one
they're
of them
silence, not silence. They're silence.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Well, it's
Wow.
because this is a little bit of a spoiler, but you find out later that they're a part of an organization called the Silence, with CE, Silence.
Huh.
But the species themselves are the Silent, which is
Wow.
very confusing.
Yes. I mean, not really, but yeah.
But
it's a
anyway,
little
this
confusing.
girl looks at the Silent and is like, "Yo, what are you? Haha, you must be Jim. Is that a Star Trek mask?" Which Star Trek was on this point in 69. Was off air actually by 69. And I think, yeah.
But then she looks away.
Was it? I don't know. I'll look it up. Put it in the show notes.
She looks away, and this is where you sort of get what's going on in this episode. Because as soon as she looks away, she forgets the thing's even
Yeah,
there.
and Amy points it out
Yeah.
in case you didn't pick up on it as an audience, because it is kind of subtle. But Amy says, "Oh, you can only remember when we're looking at you, huh? I'll take a picture then with my phone."
Right.
And then the Silent tells Amy to tell the doctor.
Kills Joy. That's this woman's name.
Kills
is Joy. This is one of the clearest on-screen, because I mean, we keep a death count if you didn't know, and it's at the 2300.
It's a little bit
mark.
behind, but it was 2300 at the end of the 10th Doctor's era. The 10th Doctor was the 2300th death.
Right, and a lot of the recent deaths have been very unclear. Like, people getting killed in big shootouts, and not knowing how many people or who even dies. This was one of the clearest deaths in a while. Right, the thing just sort of points at her, vaporizes her using its like lightning powers.
Yeah, like on our death count, we put question marks for deaths that we're uncertain about, and like just looking at the death count. Well, not like on the death count on the website, but like on our death count, we put question marks, and just looking at like my death count, there's like 20 question marks just on the page that I'm looking at right now.
Yep.
But this was like pretty unequivocal. And then Amy says you didn't have to kill her, and then the Silent is like, her name was Joy. Amy's like, "Oh,
Your name is Amy."
she's like, "How do you know that?" And he's like, "We know everything." And you actually do find out how they know all that about Amy later on.
Well, they've been manipulating the human race for thousands of
But
years.
Amy's from the future. So.
But, maybe they somehow... No, I guess it's not somehow. They do know.
And they tell Amy...
Daemons.
Yeah, that was the
first-
dumbest thing about this episode was in the Silent... I mean, it was only dumb in the aspect that the Silents were like, "We've been manipulating human history for 2,000 years." I'm like, oh, like the Daemons.
Okay, how many races have done that? The Daemons and the Silents for sure, but then I know there are a couple more.
Yeah, and I'm like completely blanking on what the other ones
There's
are.
like at least two more. The Zygons, kind of? Oh, they were kind of just there.
Yeah, the Zygons
Pteroleptals
are just
were also
dicking
just
around
exactly
in
the
history.
same as the
Pteroleptals.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think. Wasn't there one in the 10th Doctor's era?
Well, the Silurians and the Sea Devils in some regard as well. They were hibernating, waiting to take over.
Yeah.
But those are close enough to count. I'm going to count them.
I keep thinking that the Beast in Satan Pit said something about manipulating human history. Was that it? I'm sure there was one in the 10th Doctor's era where they were like, "We've been manipulating history for like hundreds of years."
Yeah, I think the Beast was like... It was trapped there, and like the guy who trapped it there manipulated people into like this conundrum where if they tried to free the Beast, like both of them would die or something like that. I don't remember.
There was one in the 10th Doctor's era, and I'm completely forgetting what it was now.
Well, we'll figure it out. It'll probably be in the show notes if I'm not lazy.
Which you won't be, because you were the one who mentioned that one. So you've got to hold up your end of the bargain. Although this
No,
is
I
30
mean,
minutes
like,
into the
yeah.
episode, so this is typically when
When I clock out.
yeah. Anyway, the Silent tells Amy to tell the doctor what he's not allowed to know, and she's like, huh, okay. And she leaves the restroom, and she's like, oh, I have to tell the doctor something, and the security guard's like, what do you got to tell him? She's like, I don't remember, and I don't remember why I said that either. And then they
Right.
go, and the doctor takes them to Cape Canaveral, and they go to this building, and Amy and River have kind of like a side conversation where River's like, I know what you're thinking, and Amy's like, no, you don't. And she's like, you're thinking if we kill the astronaut here in 1969, that it won't kill the doctor in 2011, I guess.
Yeah.
And Amy's like, oh, I guess you do know what I'm thinking. And River's like, yeah, because I thought the
Lucky
same thing.
guess.
But then River's like, well, we can't do that. And Amy's like, well, why can't we do that? And then River's like, well, because if we do that, then there'll be no reason for us to go to the lake in the first place. So we'll never come back in time here now to stop the astronaut, which will cause like a conundrum and like a paradox. And so like we can't do that because that will like rip a hole in space-time continuum. Doesn't stop Amy from trying.
There's also another conversation between Rory and River, which is pretty interesting, I think. And one of the, because I didn't think about this until they brought it up. So this is one of the most interesting parts of the episode. River is trying to unlock this door, and as she's doing that, she's having this conversation with Rory that really just puts in perspective what her character is, because she's going, forward in her own timeline, but it's the reverse of the Doctor. So really, the reverse of what we've seen since the first Doctor, I guess.
Although what you find out later is that it's much more complicated than that.
Up until now, I think
that's pretty much been how it is.
Yeah.
Later on in the season, things get complicated.
Yeah, there's that chart that we've mentioned a couple times that
artist and illustrator Will Brooks made.
Yeah, and it's really convoluted, but yeah, she mentions, I fell in love with the Doctor, partly, at least in part, because he knew so much about me. Mm-hmm. And every time I meet him, I know more about him, but he knows less about me. And there, at some point, I'll meet him and he won't even know me.
Yeah, she makes an oblique reference to the episode Silence in the Library.
Right. And she says at that point, I think it'll kill me, which, that's not what kills her, but she does die, at that point.
Although she does get uploaded to the computer mainframe because the 10th Doctor's like, I'm not going to let you die. Because, the 10th Doctor was like that.
So River's a very interesting character, a very ambitious character, I think, for not only for this show, but just for any show.
I actually really enjoy River.
Yeah, she's really cool.
RG emailed us, was like, any episode with River is automatically a good episode. See, I disagree with that because I don't think River's enough to save a bad episode, but I do like River as a character.
The thing about River, though, is you talk about the classic series companions versus the new series companions, and how the new ones are a little bit more fleshed out, at least, which doesn't make them more likable, doesn't make them better. Mm-hmm. It just makes them more fleshed out. And River, I feel it really isn't that, because her character traits, maybe there's more later, maybe I'm just glossing over important stuff, but her character traits is that she fell in love with the Doctor, but the more the important thing about her character is this entire overarching thing where she's going backwards in time.
Oh, but there's so much more than that we find out this season.
All right, this season seems like it's going to be a River season.
Season really is a River season, but there's so much more about River that we find out than that.
All right, yeah.
And I think Steven Moffat did something really cool with River that we're going to meet, and we're going to get I think an internal conflict within River that we find out later in the season that I think is unique to River that we've never seen on this show before.
Sure. She's definitely more interesting to me than Amy and Rory. That's for sure. And
I really like Doctor. Rory though, especially in this story. Also in this warehouse, there's a heart-to-heart between Rory and the Doctor. Is that now? Or is that
it's in the second episode?
It's in the second episode
when he's listening to the conversation.
Yeah, but I want to bring it up now because it's related to Rory talking with River, because Rory's talking with the Doctor, and the Doctor's like, "Oh, I was there when Rome fell," and Rory was like, "So was I," and the Doctor's like, "Do you remember your 2,000 years as an Auton?" And Rory's like, "No." And the Doctor's like, "You're lying." And he's like, "Of course I'm lying." I don't know. It just makes you feel really bad for Rory, because it really makes you realize that Rory remembers waiting for 2,000 years for Amy. He remembers seeing all these atrocities that got committed, and then Amy calls him stupid to his face. Hits home real hard there.
Yeah, there's definitely some sunk cost going on here. Not even the cost. Okay, we'll get there.
But basically, River goes down, and there's a huge nest of silence And she's like, what the hell? And she comes up and she's like,
they're like bats. Like, this is a little later on, but when they're hanging from the ceiling and stuff, which is a little bit
creepy.
uncanny almost because they're humanoid,
Yeah.
but they sleep like bats.
And
We
they
didn't
go
mention
up.
that their outfits almost look like paper mache because they're wearing suits.
Yeah.
Which I guess they adapt
Like
their
three-piece
outfit.
suits.
I guess they adapt their outfit to like whatever era they're in or whatever, which is interesting to think about.
Because I think, I didn't read this explicitly, but my feeling is that these three-piece suits on the Silence are supposed to evoke this kind of like very 60s sci-fi G-Man kind of feel. Like X-Files almost. Like the whole thing is like the government is going to come for you if you see aliens, and they're all every depiction of the government in those scenarios is like three-piece suit. They've got like black sunglasses on to hide their eyes, and they're like just in the background, like mysteriously in the background of photographs, or like watching you from afar, and you always feel like you're being watched. Like,
right.
That was kind of the vibe I got out of like dressing the Silence in suits like that.
Yeah, I mean, this episode is about a conspiracy, and there is
in
the
60s.
And there is that thing also of like, you look away from them, and then there's no way that you can prove that you saw them or anything.
Yeah.
Their suits also look like paper mache.
The masks are like really well done.
Yeah, they are. These are some of the creepiest, I think, aliens Doctor Who's ever done.
Especially because they seem to have like no mouth, but when he kills Joy and when he's talking after Joy, like a mouth kind of forms.
Right.
Which I thought was really creepy. And River comes up and is like, yep, nothing down here. And then that's when she calls Rory down. They go and they unlock the door. But then the astronaut comes in when Amy and the Doctor are behind. Kent and Delaware is buggered off to go look for something. The Doctor's like kind of confused as to why there's all this like old tech here. Like the 60s tech. Because he's like, if there's an alien species here, they would just bring their own technology, wouldn't they? Later on, he figures out why.
Well, we find out that the person in the astronaut suit is the little girl.
Yeah, well, Amy... but we find out in this pretty well shot scene, I think, where Amy picks up the gun, and then the Doctor looks at the astronaut, and it lifts his visor, and it's a little girl, and then the Doctor turns to Amy, he's like, no, and then Amy puts the gun up and shoots before she sees, and then when she sees it's the little girl, she starts screaming, and then like smash cut to the credits.
Right. This is one of the sort of Steven Moffat carryover things, which I think we'll do a little... Maybe we should start instituting that as like a segment of like, what did Steven Moffat carry over in this episode?
What did Steven Moffat do again?
Yeah. I mean, I like all of this stuff. I like when writers sort of take the same idea and do different iterations of it. And I know most people don't. But we can definitely make that like he's doing it enough where we can point it out every time,
Yeah. We may as well.
Yeah.
I think we should.
Yeah.
I noted 2 instances in the second episode, so we'll get there.
I mean, this entire thing, the little girl in the astronaut suit, is like, there are multiple other instances of this in earlier episodes.
There's actually a third one in the second episode that I'm thinking of that I didn't actually write down, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll do that sort of at the end.
But yeah, the second episode starts with a 3-month time skip, which is interesting.
Yeah, one thing this was also in the first episode, and we didn't mention it, is that there seems to be a new... I don't know if this is just for these 2 episodes, but there seems to be a little, not recap. I don't know what you call it.
Amy has like a voiceover at the start of the episode, and that goes for the whole season, by the way, and it gets really annoying.
I mean, I thought that was going to go for the whole season. I'm not annoyed by it.
It's only in the international versions of the episode. It wasn't in the original British versions. They like appended it or prepended it, I guess, for the American audience to.
Yeah, because Americans are too dumb to know what's going on.
Well, that and also it would be less likely that they would have watched the previous season.
Sure, yeah.
It gets really annoying.
I'm not kidding when I say that, by the way. I do think like a typical American like watcher is too like not even too uncaring, I guess I could say, to even like
perhaps
try to understand what's going on in the show.
Yeah, perhaps. I have no opinions either way on it. But yeah, and then we get a little bit of a recap of the previous episode, like explicitly like what happened last time, and then we cut to 3 months, and then like Amy just gets shot.
Well, this is where we see the tally marks, and this is something I've been seeing for years, like since this episode, since before I even started watching Doctor Who, since this episode aired, I've seen like people doing, because this is like an easy sort of quote cosplay unquote to do, is like people putting tally marks on themselves. And I thought this was going to be a huge thing when we finally got there, but it's actually not that big of a part of the episode.
No, but I think it's done really well. I think it like really amps up the creepiness, especially later on in this episode where you like between scenes they like get tally marks and you don't as an audience see the silent, but you see like these tally marks just start appearing on the person.
Well, also I think it's done well when they like because it's not only that you forget the silence when you are looking at them, but you forget like all information about them. So sometimes they don't even know the tally marks are on them.
Yeah,
and you don't see them sometimes. And then they'll look at a silent and they'll look at themselves and they'll be covered with tally marks.
Yeah. Well, we actually see the explanation for it now because Amy gets shot, and then we see River. River draws a tally mark on her explicitly when she sees a silent. And Canton Delaware shows up, so you're going to come with us, and she's like, "There's always another option." Just jumps off the building, and I'm like, I know what's coming.
Bringing back the TARDIS pool.
Yeah. Bringing back River landing in the TARDIS pool.
They're bringing back that it's on the side.
Yeah, that too. They shoot Rory as well. He's on a dam. He's on the Hoover Dam, I think.
Right.
Apparently, originally that scene was conceived to be on the Golden Gate Bridge. They're going to have Rory get shot on the Golden Gate Bridge. But then they're like, well, we don't want to go to San Francisco just to film that, so...
No, I thought it was going to be like it's too big of a suicide spot or something like that.
Well, that also.
Not that he commits suicide. So.
Yeah, no, he gets shot by Canton Delaware.
Right.
And throughout this, we keep seeing these scenes of the Doctor with a beard.
Yeah, is this the first time we've ever seen the Doctor with a beard? Not the 11th Doctor, just any Doctor. I think it is.
I think so.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think if we saw any other Doctors with a beard, and I don't think we did, so. Yeah. Wow.
Saw Tom Baker with a beard prior to his role as the 4th Doctor when he played Rasputin.
Great. Well,
he played Tom Baker playing Rasputin.
Of course.
As he does in every role.
Tom Baker as the Doctor. But Canton Delaware is like, why do these people have all their marks on them? He's like interrogating the Doctor, and there's like a line around the Doctor that nobody's allowed to cross. And you find out why later. It's because the TARDIS is inside that line and they don't want anybody to run to the TARDIS on accident. But they're like building, again, a Moffat bringing back thing that will sum up at the end of the episode. They're building, quote, the perfect prison for the Doctor, unquote.
Yeah, didn't we just get this?
Yeah, this one was a little weird because I was like, we just got that. But anyway.
Well, yeah, for us, like, in terms
even
of when
still, it would have been
a couple months, not a full
couple
year,
months, but it would have been like 2 episodes ago that you just watched. So
yeah, you might have forgot.
It's close enough though that it's weird.
Look, if you're a casual viewer, all right, I'm just kidding. But yeah, they're sort of enclosing
Dwarf
the Doctor.
Star alloy that, was like, where did you get this? But at the same time, like, I don't really care where you got this. I'm just going to go with it. They close up the prison.
I mean, it looks cool. Looks like sort of puzzle pieces being assembled.
Yeah. And they link together and don't have any seams.
Right.
And then Canton Delaware closes the door and he's got 2 body bags inside and it opens up and it's Amy and Roy and like, oh man, that could really do with air holes. And Canton's like, well, I've never had any complaints before. Then they go into the TARDIS and Canton reveals that he's been working with them the whole time.
Right. So they're all there. They go and pick up River.
River, yeah.
By having her land in the pool. And the
Which
Doctor,
was still hurt, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't know this, like falling into water from high heights isn't like a soft landing. Like hitting water at high velocity actually causes the water to act, some people say, like similarly to landing on cement. So
yeah, no, I mean, just think about it. Like you can fall into a pool from like what, 5 or 6 feet, and like it can sting.
Yeah.
So, but she's fine. She makes it through. She just comes out in like a full body cast in a wheelchair. She's like, all right, what's the plan?
There was apparently going to be a running theme in the second episode where River was going to refuse to remove the Doctor's handcuffs, and also the Doctor was going to refuse to shave his beard, and it was going to like culminate in River coming at the Doctor handcuffed with like a shaving razor.
Oh God!
But they just skipped that.
Yeah, probably for the best.
There's also in the first episode we've got to mention Stetsons are cool, and the River shoots the hat off his head again.
Right.
Another Moffat for bringing back something he's done before thing, because she shoots the fez off his head. Again, like for us 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I guess that is something that's like different enough that I consider that a reused material rather than just like a callback, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, then again, what's the difference, really?
Yeah, what is the difference? Anyway, the Doctor reveals that they forget everything about the Silent when they look away, and they like project a hologram of the Silent to like demonstrate that even like, I guess, like the Weeping Angels, the image of a Silent acts like a Silent.
Right. It's a hologram that was they used the footage from Amy's phone.
Yeah, the picture.
To create that hologram.
Because they all kind of get spooked because the Doctor injects these like micro recorders into their skin, and then Canton Delaware's all of a sudden lights up like it has a message, and they're like, what the hell?
Right. It's sort of a flashing light on the palm of their hand.
And he plays the message, and the message basically has the Doctor telling Canton Delaware that once he turns around from looking at the Silent hologram to adjust the Doctor's bow tie, and he didn't realize why he had done that, and then he realizes now, like, oh, they all realize there's, like, post-hypnotic suggestion going on with the Silent. Like, that was why Amy wanted to go tell the Doctor after the Silent told her to go tell the Doctor the thing. You know, because it's, like, the Silent can tell you what to do while you're looking at it, and then you go and do it.
Which is how they've been manipulating everyone.
Yeah. So they go to look for the little girl in Florida again, and this is when the Doctor realizes that like the whole reason why humanity's going to the moon is because the Silent needed a spacesuit, because they find the spacesuit empty, and the girl's like crawled out of the spacesuit.
Well, there's a Silent in the TARDIS or something. Like there's some.
Well, it's the
scene.
hologram.
Was it just the hologram?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And they go, and Canton and Amy go to to a nearby orphanage looking for the girl.
We meet one of the worst actors in recent Doctor Who.
He's doing his best. He's also supposed to be like kind of crazy because like his mind has been wiped so many times that he like doesn't remember anything.
Yeah, but still.
I guess.
Still. And they walk into this orphanage, and there's like this writing on the wall that's done in what looks like blood, and he's just like, don't mind that.
It's just for kids. And then Amy notices that he's got the same writing like on his wrist.
Right. And it says get out.
Yeah. Like, go away, get out. And then the guy's like, yeah, we're going to close in 67. And then Canton was like, it's 69. He's like, no, you don't understand. We're going to close in 67. And he's like, dude, it's 69 right now. Yeah, and also, like I said, in the other scene, the Doctor finds out that the reason why humanity is going to the moon is because
the Silent wants them to.
The Silent needed a spaceship. Not a spaceship, a spacesuit to keep the girl alive. Because they realized that the spacesuit was, like, designed to be a life support system for this little girl. The Doctor goes and breaks into Cape Canaveral.
And some weird things go on with Amy. She's walking past... She's walking through a hallway, and then there's a scene that I'm guessing is something that's touched on later in the season that happens.
Yes.
There's sort of a... I don't know what you call these things, but just like a...
Like a sliding eye hole, the door.
Right. And a woman looks out, and she says something cryptic. I forget what it is.
She says, oh, she must just be dreaming.
Right.
And then she closes it.
And you can see that she's on like an all-white background.
Yeah.
So some sort of...
The eye patch lady.
Right. And
I think is what most people call her until you find out what her name is.
Huh.
She's also, she's got an eye patch on her right eye.
She closes that, and Amy's like, what the heck? Like, what's going on? So she tries to open the door, and it's just a normal-looking sort of creepy kids room.
Yeah.
And then she looks back at the door, and this sliding portion is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
That was creepy to me. Like, that entire sequence, I think, really worked.
Yeah.
I'm sure once we figure out what that is, it won't be as creepy, but...
No. It in my opinion, it retains its creepiness. Because, like, it was still creepy to me knowing what happens, like, in this episode.
All right. But, I mean, maybe that was because, like, in the episode itself, you don't get what it is.
Maybe. Amy gets captured by a Silent. Also, Canton Delaware shoots a Silent. Because the Silent's like, we don't need weapons. And the Canton's like, welcome to America. Bang, bang, bang.
Oh God.
I thought that was hilarious. Doctor, like,
There was one that I thought was funnier. I forget the actual circumstances of it, but it's later in the episode, and someone, like a bunch of people pull guns on someone. They're like, "Welcome to America," or something like that.
the doctor, like, modifies the Apollo 11 capsule.
There's the there's a scene that's actually like really funnily awkward where they go and like the doctor is it's later on, but I think we're gonna forget about
Is it
it.
when the doctor gets rescued by Nixon,
Yes.
River, and Rory, and then
Yep.
they leave, and Rory just, like, awkwardly breaks the model
Yeah.
of Apollo 11 that's sitting on the desk, and he, like, puts it down. He just goes, "America salutes you," and walks away.
Yeah, but like the acting from those two professors or whoever they were, I guess researchers or engineers or whatever.
Head guards, I guess. They're the head of security. Because Nixon comes in like, "The security of the American space program is in your hands."
No, but I think what he said, what he meant by that was like the success of it is in your hands. Because I think the guard was the guy who actually like uncuffs the doctor, and these were like just
I'm pretty sure they were like
People-
head of security, though.
I don't know, like they were just wearing
Pretty
suits and
sure-
ties.
Yeah. Yeah. Head of
like,
security doesn't get their hands dirty.
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, I
Doesn't
don't think
matter.
So. Their acting was like just perfectly awkward.
And so
They're like-
so was Arthur Darrell as Rory. He was just he played the awkward, like, oops, I shouldn't have touched this pretty much perfectly.
Nixon is like that man is crucial to our success, and they're like, oh, in that case, I guess we can let him go, sir.
He's like, "This agent, codenamed the Doctor, is crucial to the success of the American space program." There's a lot of funny, as you like, is impossible to avoid if you have Nixon in your story. References to Watergate in this.
Well, at the end, he's like, Doctor, will I be remembered? Doctor's like, I forget what he says.
He says, "You'll never be forgotten." But he also there's a line when the doctor's telling Nixon, he's like, "You got to record everything in this office to make sure that you know when you're like attacked by a silent."
Oh God.
And also, after the doctor says that line about never being forgotten, as he walks into the TARDIS, he says, like, "Say hi to David Frost for me." And Nixon's like, "David Frost? Who's David Frost?" If you don't know,
I don't know who
David
Frost is.
Frost performed these very famous interviews with Nixon. It was, I believe, the first, and I think only interview that Nixon gave after he resigned from the presidency, a couple years after, to this guy, David Frost. And they're like really famous interviews. There was a movie made about them called Frost/Nixon. And basically, in them, Frost basically tries to nail Nixon and admit his guilt, and Nixon's like really upset that, you know, this isn't what he expected to be talked about. Nixon's trying to like,
Well, what did he freaking think it was going to
like
be?
the whole interview is like Nixon's trying to downplay his involvement in Watergate and basically like, "I'm not a crook." So like the really, really famous interviews, basically where David Frost like gets out of Nixon like a lot of details that hadn't come out before. So it's an interesting reference that I don't know if you would actually get if you were like in Britain
I
watching
didn't get
this.
it, and I'm in America watching this.
But yeah, there was a movie made about those interviews and the tapes later called Frost Nixon. Frost. You pronounce it Frost Nixon, but there's like a slash in between. It's
No,
Frost.
I can pronounce it however I want.
Yeah, you can pronounce it however you want, but I pronounce it Frost Nixon. Anyway, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but basically the plot moves along at a pretty quick pace here.
No, it feels a little disjointed now that I reflect like back on how it all plays out, because all the characters are doing separate things.
Well, basically,
I like the second episode. I think because the setup for this, you know, the first maybe 20 minutes with the doctor dying and all of that, I wasn't really on board, but it grew on me, and you know, I like the second episode. It does feel a little disjointed though.
yeah. I mean, and basically, Canton, Delaware, what happens now is the plot gets resolved pretty handily, and then we get some like, the plot gets resolved about 10 minutes before the end of the episode, and then we get some scenes that are like setting up things later in the season and also just resolving character arcs. Because Canton, Delaware records the silent saying, "You should kill us all on sight," and then they transmit that to everyone in the world during the Apollo moon landing.
Right.
So all the silent get killed on sight. There was, to me, I thought about this later on because, you know, the wiki mentioned that like during the story there's actually 2 copies of the Doctor running around because during 69 the third Doctor's trapped with UNIT in London.
Okay, well, I'm sure
And
there's a plenty of stories where that's the
well,
case.
yeah, but that wasn't my problem. My question was like, well, wouldn't the third Doctor like watch the moon landing? So wouldn't he also like hear this command to kill the Silent on sight? So wouldn't the 11th Doctor like know, or like wouldn't the 11th Doctor kill the
Maybe you didn't watch
Silent?
it. Who knows?
I guess, but the Doctor explicitly mentions that everyone on Earth at some point will watch this footage, and no
Well, he
one will
said
forget it.
everyone who he gives this sort of little speech, which I thought was pretty cool, where he says, everyone who travels in space in the future is going to look back at this footage
Yeah.
or be inspired or like be connected to this footage, even if they don't necessarily watch it. Their like legacy of this footage is has already been shown. All this the human empire from whenever it shows up, because it constantly shows up, and the multiple
There's
different
like
human
three of them,
empires.
yeah. Or four, I think. I think End of the World was the Doctor was
I
like,
don't
this
know
is
how
the
many
fourth
there
great and
are.
bountiful human empire, the ninth Doctor. And anyway, yeah,
But
then
like,
we get some character arc stuff to end.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I like the Doctor's speech,
it's kind of a
but
dumb resolution, honestly. I think, like, I don't know. There's just something about this resolution that rubbed me the wrong way. Is like that's how you're.
because it feels very tidy and neat and easy. And it feels like the Silent went out too easily for such like a major
Which,
play. And
which that might be a good thing, because like you talk about how the Daleks and Cybermen are always there's only one left, and it's always like kind of a cop out type thing where like the Silents can easily come back.
yeah.
You know.
I forgot to mention, Amy gets taken and they find like her
Right,
little
we skipped
recorder
over this entire scene.
because it's not that important.
Yeah, it's
really
pretty important.
Well,
I think.
okay, I guess it's important because right before they transmit the whole thing, they like go and rescue Amy from the Silent. There's like a whole scene where like River's shooting all the Silent, and
Well,
also interestingly, the spaceship that they go into that the Silent are in is an exact copy of the one that was above Craig
Right,
Owen's
yep,
house in the lodge.
Totally noticed that.
And I have no comment on that.
That's going to be some BS like thing they're going to bring back and tie back in some way. Calling it right now, there's no way that's not.
I have nothing to say on the matter.
We skipped over the love triangle nonsense that's still going on.
No, it happens right now. It happens right now because Rory goes to unhook
Well, no,
Amy's.
we sort of touched on like Amy's little speech or whatever, where she's like she's asking the Doctor to rescue her, and Rory's listening in on that.
Yeah, on the little
And then later,
palm
and then
thing.
right, or no, it was the little
Yeah, the little recorder that's in
Yeah.
the palm, but hers got removed when the Silent took her. And
Yeah.
Rory found it. Yeah,
yeah.
but also Rory goes to like unhook her straps, and she's like, "Get your stupid face over here." And he's like, "Wait, what? You call me stupid?" She's like, "I always call you stupid." He's like, "But you call my face stupid, and you don't usually do that unless it's the Doctor." She's like, "Oh, it was just a figure of speech." He's like, "But you were
It's not
talking
really
about
a
like
figure-
you were
also,
talking
it's
about
not a
like
figure of
falling
speech.
out of the sky," and she's like, "That's also a figure of speech." He's like, "This is not really."
Well, because the thing is, during this earlier part of the episode, she's like, if I make it out of this, I'm gonna tell you that I love you and not him. She never like makes reference to the names and stuff. But Rory's like, "You're talking about me, right?" And she's like, yeah, of course I was.
Yeah, awkward. She calls the Doctor her best friend later on while Rory's listening in. It's really awkward.
Yeah. So this is still happening. This
Only
is still
by
happening.
Amy, though. Only because Amy is becoming more of a jerk to Rory, at least.
Well, she is replaced. So
Okay, but like
yeah, no, it's a continuous trend. But I mean,
it's.
I said this.
But what I was going to say is that it's still like those are still actually Amy's thoughts. I'm not
Okay,
going to spoil
yeah.
like how that plays out.
I
but-
mean, look, I said this weeks ago, and I'll say it again. If I was in charge of the show, none of this would have ever made it to the screen.
yeah, but we get awesome Rory though, like where you feel real bad for, but then you're like, man, Rory's got a lot of character growth and development.
Sure, I mean, he's taking it better than like Mickey did in some way. It's not really the same scenario, but I don't know. There's some sunk costs going on here, though. He's like, man, I waited 2,000 years and stuff. So
They drop River off, and River kisses him, and he's like, "We've never done that before." And she's like, "Oh." He's like, "There's a first time for everything." And she's like, "Well, there's also a lost time for
right, and
everything."
that's the last time for her.
Or so she thinks. She doesn't know, but she assumes because their timelines have been going in reverse order that that's the last time she'll kiss him.
Yeah, and I mean for this to like work, I guess it should be. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what's going to
No,
happen.
consequences can be reversed as long as you do it well.
No, but I mean, like, yeah, if this isn't the last time and she thinks it is, then like, what is going on there? You know?
And then Amy's talking to the doctor about being pregnant, but Rory's got the little palm thing
Right.
still on him.
We skipped over that as well earlier. I think in the end
That
of
happens
the
after they drop River off. So, because it's the final scene of the episode right before the little girl.
yeah, no, but we like there's an earlier part of this story that was I think at the end of the first
Oh, yeah,
episode
where
where she
Amy
goes
tells the
like,
doctors-
"Doctor, I'm pregnant."
Yeah, we forgot. We actually did forget to mention that, which is kind of a big thing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. That was the end of the first episode, the end of Impossible Astronaut.
And then, yeah, she's telling the doctor, and he's like, didn't you tell Rory? And she's like, no. And he's like, what? Why wouldn't you tell Rory? Like, he's your husband.
And it's because she didn't want the baby
Yeah,
to
she
have
comes
a
up with
time
like a
head.
really BS excuse. She's like, I didn't want to tell Rory that our baby might have a time head because we could like travel through time and like conceived him in the time vortex. And the doctor's like, what's a time head? What are you talking about? And then Rory comes and he's like, hello, listening. And then the doctor's like, you should probably talk with him. And then the doctor like tries to scan her.
And he does, and
And it's like
getting
flipping
strange
between, yeah,
readings.
it's flipping between positive and negative.
Right.
The doctor's like, that's kind of weird.
Like, damn pregnancy tests, things never work. Like 8 months pregnant, it's coming back negative.
And then we see the little girl from the suit, because the doctor's like, we could go find the little girl, but how about we don't and go on adventures instead? And we see the little girl, and she's walking through an alleyway, and there's an old man. He's like, hey, what's going on, little girl? And she's like, I'm sick. And he's like, can I help you? And she's like, don't worry, I can heal it. It's pretty easy. And then she regenerates, and it ends.
Right. Or like she does what looks like a regeneration.
So,
So there's definitely a lot of mystery in this season, more so than there really has been ever.
yeah. Especially this episode sets up a lot of, huh? Going on here.
The preview for the next episode hints that like one of the overarching there's definitely a lot of overt overarching things in this season, but one of the I think overarching symbols is like something on the palm of your hand, because there was the recorder in this episode, and there's something I forget what it is, but in the preview,
the mark of the black spot or something.
right? Yeah,
I think the next episode is called Curse of the Black Spot. Let's just check that. Yeah, Curse of the Black Spot.
which is interesting.
That episode brings back a character
That you never expect would come back.
That episode is a prequel to a First Doctor story
That's cool.
for the pirates. I think it's the First Doctor.
What?
Yeah.
Is it a prequel to The Chase? When they go with that pirate ship in The Chase?
I think, well, I don't remember exactly, but the pirates in Curse of the Black Spot are like, yeah, it's weird. It's kind of confusing. Interesting,
right.
but kind of weird. Anyway, there's a lot to unpack with this story. And
Yeah, there's a lot I want to talk about.
I have a couple quotes that I want to talk about, and that's about it. First, I want to mention all the stuff that Moffat brought back that I noticed.
Yeah.
One was River jumping out of something and landing in the TARDIS, which she did in Time of the Angels and Flesh and Stone, when she jumps out of the Byzantium and the Doctor catches her in space. Another one, is the ultimate prison to contain the Doctor, which was on Pandorica. The palm thing, when they find it, and it's like Amy going, help me, it's dark, reminded me a lot of when they found Evangelista's little recorder in Silence in the Library.
Yeah, and if you remember, the spacesuits from that episode were like astronaut suits that we have
The
in the
suits
current
in
era.
that one looked a lot like the spacesuits in this one.
That also reminded me of the gas mask kid from the Doctor Dance, Empty Child and the Doctor Dances.
Which is, again, that was a Steven Moffat story.
And there's always this sort of refrain, which I think was, "Are you my mommy?"
Yeah, Are You My Mommy?
Yeah.
So those are kind of the ones that I noticed anyway.
Yeah, there were.
I mean, there were more. River being locked up in
I
the
guess
prison,
that's it.
but-
I didn't have any more, actually.
Yeah, so wanted to mention that.
That can become a sort of ongoing
Yeah.
segment.
I think it will become an ongoing segment, actually. And then River has a lot of quotes in this. Three quotes that I noted that I thought were particularly interesting. One we've already talked about, which is the "It's gonna kill me" line, when she was talking about seeing the Doctor and he won't recognize her. One that I thought was interesting because it tied in with something we talked about last season, which was the Doctor making his companions into people like want to impress him or whatever. When she's talking with Amy and Rory and like, what do we do? Like, what do we do now where the doctor dies? They're like, what do we do? And River's like, we're the doctor's friends. She specifically calls them friends. She's like, we're the doctor's friends. We do what we always do. And Amy's like, well, what's that? She's like, we do as we're told.
Right.
Which I thought was really interesting. Because, she calls them the friends, but at the same time, it kind of places the doctor on like a higher level than them, because she's like, we do as we're told. Like, when the doctor tells us to do something, we do it. And, just thought that was interesting.
Which has never really been the case for most of the companions.
Yeah,
and
especially since most of them seem to like just avoid doing what the doctor tells them to do, and that gets them in a lot of trouble.
Most of the time that does put them in dangerous situations, honestly.
And then my last one that I want to talk about, I think it's at the very end. Actually, no, it's not. It's sometime in the middle of the second episode. River says something. Someone's like talking about River, and she says, "Looks aren't everything," which I thought was really interesting.
Which I thought was wrong.
I thought that was interesting because we see the doctor die at the start of this episode, and then River says in the next episode, "Looks aren't everything." Kind of like, seeing isn't necessarily believing. We all saw the doctor die, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's dead.
Just like how we all saw Blake alive, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's alive in Blake 7.
Well, I mean, the final episode's called Blake, so... And
I'm talking about the end of Series C.
Yeah, I know, but...
And just Series C as a whole. Check out our Blake 7 podcast, Zenith.
You'll find it on Apple Podcasts and Google Play and YouTube. And those are like the big things that I wanted to bring up, because I think Vivis says a lot of interesting things in this episode that tie in not only to things that Moffat was trying to bring in with the Doctor, the whole Doctor makes his companions into dangerous people, and, like Rory calling out the Doctor last season, but also, in this season, one of the big things in this season is like, if you see something, is it actually what you're seeing? You already know that Amy's replaced, so I can talk about that now, but like, this whole season...
I didn't know, like, for sure, but thanks.
But until you find out, like, what's going on with Amy, and then you're like, well, we saw Amy for the whole season, but it turns out, like, again, looks aren't everything. And with a pregnancy, with a pregnancy test, positive, negative, looks aren't everything.
Right? Blake 7 did all this kind of stuff like 30 years before this, in kind of a meta sense, actually, and I'm interested to see if this will go sort of meta with it as well.
Mm-hmm. Kind of all I wanted to talk about here.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the silent design, which I think is really cool. Their eyes, I think, are done really well, because when you see them from afar, they just look, because their eye sockets are like very deep and...
Yeah, they're like really inset into their face.
Right. So when you look at them from afar, they look like almost a stereotypical gray, like alien type being with these giant eyes that... And this is something that people have said for, I think, hundreds of years. And this might be from Disney animators, or maybe Walt Disney himself, I think, are the ones who most famously said this, is like, if you want to get your audience to connect with the character that you create, give them eyes. And if you want them to look totally, unrelatable, as much as I hate that term, then you don't give them eyes.
The Daleks have only an eye stalk.
Right.
It's like not actually eyes. And I think we talked about that in our Alien episode of Triple Play.
Yeah, we've talked about it a couple times on various podcasts. And this is really interesting because, from afar, the silents don't look like they really have eyes, or like human-like eyes. And then when you get up close, they do.
They have these really deep eye sockets.
But they don't look like very warm eyes, or they don't look like...
No, they're very menacing.
Yeah.
Very high brow bones. They're bald, too, we forgot to mention.
Right.
I just think the silent design was realized really well.
Yeah, it was.
Like, the costuming is just really good for them.
Yep.
Costuming's been really good ever since we entered the Moffat era, like with Silurians last season as well. Looked fantastic.
Yeah, I think I would say it's noticeably better than the
Russell T
era.
I think that's because they increased the budget, so they have more room to work with.
Yeah.
More budget will always give you more room to work with on things like that.
Sure, but I mean also, were the Slitheen only the result of budget? Was the Absorbalov only the result of budget? No.
The Absorbalov was because they saw a kid's drawing and they realized that on screen.
Wasn't it like a contest that the kid won or something? Yeah.
I mean, was the Scribble Monster a product of low budget? That one might have been, yeah. Anyway, an interesting start to Series 6. Like I said last week, Series 6 and 7 are the ones that are like really contentious for people who like talk about the Moffat era, I guess. the ones that are really,
The ones that people are
yeah.
pointing to when they say they don't like this era of Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's very. I think these two seasons are wildly inconsistent in quality. I think they're wildly inconsistent also in like actually following through on some of the questions that they
Wow.
ask. But I think I mean I'm excited to watch it again. I'm not excited knowing what's going to happen, which is the weird thing. Like, I mean, I know I was texting Keon about this. Like this season, like knowing what's going to happen, I'm actually kind of less excited to watch it than not knowing.
Huh.
But looking forward to it.
Yeah.
We'll reach the next Christmas special right at Christmas, I think. Not the next Christmas special? I think the next Christmas special after the next one. Because there's a Christmas special in the middle of the season, I think, because the season gets split in two. Is that how it worked? Hang on. I just want to double check this. I know that our Christmas special episode got roughly around Christmas. No, okay, there isn't a split.
Wow. All right. Well, glad we
Christmas
got
special
that
between
sorted out.
Well, yeah, because I guess that would make sense because this aired in April and then the second half airs in like August. Makes sense. Anyway, yeah, I don't have anything else to say about this.
Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, so we have a quick short email from RG to read out and respond to. It says, Hiya, TYD Secret Service. For the first time in Doctor Who, his companions are a married couple. This episode has River's song in it, so it is automatically a good episode with the flirting turned up to 11. River gets to shoot another hat off the Doctor's head. I enjoy jammy dodges on occasion, preferably with a cup of sweet milky tea. Steven Moffat wrote this episode, so there are lots of twists and turns. It sets up the entire season. Will we get to see Jim the Fish? I bloody hope so. Stay brilliant, RG. Oh yeah, Jim the Fish is what River mentioned to the Doctor, not, what did I call it, Jeffrey the Elephant or whatever?
Yeah.
I too enjoy jammy dodges. We get jammy dodges in South Africa.
Never had one.
I typically didn't eat them with tea though. But I did enjoy jammy dodgers as a snack when I was a kid. Now I'm really craving a jammy dodger. Wonder how much it would cost to import. Actually, you could probably buy them. We have like a supermarket here that like imports. It has like imported snacks like that. So maybe I'll just go and see if I can find some jammy dodgers.
Good luck.
Jammy dodgers are like a lot easier to buy than I think maybe custard.
Yeah,
Genuine custard.
I don't know. Well, anyway. There's also longevity problems with custard and stuff like that. So, yeah, we don't have to get into that.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for emailing us, RG. Always a pleasure to hear from you. And if everything goes well, you'll be on the show in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And if you, dear listener, would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the Impossible Astronaut, Day of the Moon, and the Silence. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching The Curse of the Black Spot. But until then, the end.